Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bullard, forgive me that I had to run out on your testimony to go vote, but your written testimony is compelling, and I know your verbal testimony was. You've witnessed a lot of folks on your terrain here. Senator Hawley, I think, made me very happy as he echoed some of your points. I want to get a little deeper into it. Just ask you first about the Packers and Stockyards Act. Why isn't it, in your opinion, being enforced? And what might we do to make it have more teeth to prevent a lot of the harms that you so well detailed?
Well, I think it hasn't been enforced for the same reason we haven't enforced our antitrust laws, and that was a belief that if we just leave the markets alone, they will self-heal. Obviously, that has not happened, and it's decimated our industry. Congress recognized the need to provide additional protections to independent livestock producers clear back in 1921 when they passed the Packers and Stockyards Act. We now need the Packers and Stockyards Act to be fully implemented, and to do so, we need the U.S. Department of Agriculture to promulgate rules. And they began doing so in the last administration. They need to complete those rules. And that is because we have not enforced our antitrust laws. We have created an oligopolistic structure in the marketplace that is exerting harmful buying power upon the industry, and it is wiping out our producers. And if we don't take some immediate action in the form of regulatory relief, we will continue to see a loss of producers. And the Packers and Stockyards Act rules are the means by which we can provide some confidence to our industry and perhaps attract new entrants again if they believe they have a fair and robustly competitive industry to enter. So that's how we accomplish it. We write the rules and then enforce them.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you on the urgency for the Trump administration to finish that rulemaking process so we have some teeth. I want to switch to an issue that the good chairperson and I really bonded over. It's just the abuses within the checkoff program. We know that there needs to be serious reform. I'm proud to have introduced the Opportunities for Fairness in Farming Act, the OFF Act, with Chair Lee, which would reform that checkoff program. But can you explain what the beef checkoff program is and describe how it's been overtaken by lobbyists and lobbying groups and the interests of corporate meat packers over the individual farmers and ranchers, and how in many ways those programs are used to hurt you and your interests?
So the beef checkoff program was passed in the '85 Farm Bill. It was intended to provide monies for beef promotion and research, and the monies were collected in the form of taxes on independent producers, and it generates tens of millions of dollars a year. The intent, of course, was to increase demand for beef. However, the money's been funneled through organizations that lobby on public policy issues that are contrary to the interests of independent producers. So independent producers find themselves today being forced to pay a tax on every head of animal sold, only to see the funds from that tax being used in the halls of Washington to lobby against their interests. For example, our members fully support mandatory country of origin labeling for beef, and they found that the organizations that are major recipients of the beef checkoff program are lobbying in Washington against that interest. We shared then President Trump's, during his first terms, effort to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement. However, the organizations that our checkoff funds were being funneled to were in fact trying to promote that failed trade agreement. So there are many issues like that that are where we see the interests of many cattle farmers and ranchers and sheep producers being undermined by the organizations that have received the funds.
Well, let's talk about that mandatory country of origin labeling. I honestly, again, I'm a guy from New Jersey. I didn't know about this before I came to Washington. I was sort of shocked at how we were screwing over independent ranchers with legislation like this. And so can you explain why mandatory country of origin labeling actually should be done right and it's not violated in the way that I've seen it violated, and why it's essential for fair competition, and really how did the elimination of this requirement in effect really harm American ranchers?
Well, in any competitive market, you have to have symmetry in information between the buyer and the seller. And currently, without country of origin labeling, the multinational meat packers that are importing beef from 20 different countries are able to bring it into the U.S. market and mask the origins of that product and actually pass it off to U.S. consumers as if it were a domestic product because it bears the same U.S. inspection sticker as a domestic product does. But worse than that, since 2015, when country of origin labeling was repealed by Congress for beef and for pork, the current regulations have allowed meat packers to import a product, say a steak from Uruguay, that has a product of Uruguay label on it when it crosses U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And then when it's brought into a U.S. processing plant, the Uruguayan label can be thrown in the garbage, a new plastic wrapper fixed around the meat, and then it can be sold with a product of the USA label. Now, USDA did go through a rulemaking process, and on January 1 of 2026, we're supposed to see that remedied. However, that's only a voluntary law, so it is not going to require any packer to label any foreign products, and we are seeing a significant increase in the volume of foreign beef coming into this country, being passed off to unsuspecting consumers as if it were a domestic market product. And as a result, they're priced accordingly. Instead of the consumer receiving a discount if the product is half the cost from Uruguay or Argentina, for example, consumers paying the same price as if it were domestic. So consumers are being deceived. They're being exploited in the marketplace without mandatory country of origin labeling. Consumers deserve to know where the beef came from and under what country's food safety production regime it was produced under.
Mr. Chairman, I hope we do another round, but I'm going to stop here in deference to my Alabama ancestors and my dear friend, the senator from Alabama.
Thank you very much. I just ran the length of Russell, so thank you for giving me a moment to catch my breath. Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate you holding this hearing today.